Folks, it's about time that we have that discussion on the biggest fraud across Major League Baseball currently. His first name is Jurickson, his last name is Profar, and we're going to get into how he completely swindled the Atlanta Braves and how he absolutely fooled everybody and their mother to think that 2024 was a genuine season. This comes just, mind you, months after signing a brand new multi-year $40+ million contract where Jurickson is going to get the complete bag, at least here in year one with the Atlanta Braves, all while playing only half a season and having no impact should Atlanta somehow, some way get all the way back from being at least 7 games below 500 at the time of recording this and actually having the playoff run that we haven't seen across Major League Baseball until this point. Profar not only swindled the Atlanta Braves, but it created a greater discussion as to what happened in 2024. And all stars are aligning to suggest that Jurickson Profar was far from truthful that we saw in the 2024 breakout season with the San Diego Padres. And it all makes endless sense coming of age with this new information. How's it going, everybody? My name is Tyler Ward, but many of you guys know me on YouTube already as Wardy, where I cover the Mets there at WardyMLB to over 30,000 subscribers. And be on the lookout, folks, as we're going to be having more content here on the platform for our latest WardyMLB content presented by Stark Raving Sports. You may have also seen my work in the Bleacher Report app, as I'm an MLB host Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern for MLB-wide topics, as well as a reoccurring contributor with the New York Post Sports YouTube channel and their socials. And today, we're getting into Jurickson Profar, because like each and every one of you, when I first saw that news, initially from Mike DePortez, not even Jim Passan or anyone, Jurickson Profar is in fact going to be facing suspension for a type of PED. Come to find out that is in fact true. Jeff Passan, everyone reaffirms, and bam, Jurickson Profar is suspended 80 games for the regular season, as well as not being eligible for playoffs for the Atlanta Braves. As you guys see, Profar's statement here, it was important for this to get out right away, but you can definitely tell, and the wordplay especially, that this is something that I have a feeling that Jurickson maybe was expecting, and you have to wonder how long the Atlanta Braves were sitting on this before it finally became public. As we know, Jurickson Profar was a man that had himself a lot of mediocre years getting his career started with the Texas Rangers, a little stint with Oakland as well, a guy that could give you north of 20 home runs and have some respectable seasons with 70 to 80 RBIs, but usually couldn't hit well for contact, would struggle with his on-base ability, and defensively he could play various positions, but isn't necessarily going to play a lot of them proficiently. Profar, originally a top prospect there for Texas for a long period of time, never really blossomed the way that they would hope, and that ultimately led to his departure, to being there in Oakland, and then landing with the San Diego Padres, in which he had some very solid seasons with them up until we saw his postseason run in 2022, where he was a key focal point to their offense, as well as then what we saw in 2024. But what transpired in 2023 leading to 2024 is very important context. In 2023, the San Diego Padres decided not to bring back Jurickson Profar. And Profar, who initially had a tall task of an asking price, potentially on a multi-year deal, had to settle late into spring training or so with the Colorado Rockies on a 1-year contract. Profar would go on to play so poorly for the Rockies in the 2023 season that he would actually be cut by them. The Colorado Rockies, the same team who have had Bud Black as their manager what feels like my entire lifetime, regardless of the success or lack thereof of the club. That same Rockies is what we're talking about here. Couldn't even handle Jurickson Profar on the roster because of how poorly he played. And that completely set the stage then for a reunion with the San Diego Padres, a Padres team that needed help with their outfield, especially after parting ways with Juan Soto, as he was then, as we know, traded to the New York Yankees heading into the 2024 season. Profar and Jackson Merrill are two guys that they rely heavily on to have success, and Jackson Merrill does his thing, impressively so, as a rookie phenom that we saw in the 2024 season at the young age of 21 or so. Jurickson Profar, though, at the age of 31, has himself a breakout season by all accounts. Offensively, to a degree, defensively, it just was unfathomable to come up with how this happened for Jurickson Profar, because while yes, he did have back-to-back seasons that we saw in 2018 and 2019 between the Rangers and the Oakland A's with at least 20 home runs and, you know, around 70 RBIs or more, but really fluctuated with his quality of a hitter. He was just 7% above league average as a hitter in the 2018 rather. In 2019, in the final year of the Juice Baseball era, we saw 90% down WRC plus, which meant that he was 10% below the league average batter in baseball. So how does he go from that to then in the 2023 season, 78 WRC plus, over 20% worse than the average batter in baseball, to having career highs across the board, roughly 40% better than the average batter with a 139 WRC plus, 24 home runs, 85 RBIs, and 94 runs scored. He's recorded 82 in 2022 with the Padres and 10 stolen bags, which ties his career high as well from his Texas Rangers and previous Padres stint. But a 280 average, a 380 on base percentage, and a 459 slug, all an anomaly. The only thing that has been of relevant consistency is, if anything, you look at the slugging, as he had a 459 slug, 458 rather, back in the 2018 season with the Rangers, but hasn't touched anything close for the most part since. So how does he make these significant jumps by, we're looking at over 100 points in the slugging, we're looking at over 50 plus points in the on-base percentage, we're looking at over 40 plus points there in the average? How does that drastically change all in one season? And that is where we find ourselves with reaching the conclusion of this video. What did Jurickson Profar famously do returning to the San Diego Padres, as well as this past offseason? He trained heavily with Fernando Tatis Jr. and his father, Fernando Tatis Sr. And I'm not here to say that, okay, you automatically have to connect the dots, because, again, these things happened in the past. Who's to say that what happened with Tatis has anything to do with Profar whatsoever? But it is at least something to have a conversation on, because as we see now, the Braves got absolutely swindled into thinking that what they had in the player was going to be truly what they were. And to be caught with PEDs, that the way that Profar was, whether it is because of what he could maybe claim as recovery, if anything, or in the obvious case of not just recovery, but also in power ability, that we saw him going gap to gap. We saw Profar trying to pick fights with guys constantly. It felt like in all the key matchups that we saw this past season, Profar was one of the biggest yappers from the Padres side, trying to make something happen, not backing down. We all remember those highlights. And the one commonality is that this all happened for the most part in 2024. We haven't seen Profar have nearly as extroverted of an entire season that we saw in 2024, both offensively with his output, defensively with his ability and his strong arm, as well as what we saw with the yapping behind it. All the makings of Jurickson Profar more than likely having something in his system throughout the course of last season. And now the question is, how was he able to keep that wraps? Because I don't think it's a situation where the Padres turn a blind eye to it. I think it's a situation where clearly he was doing something and was able to get it through the system, and let that be that. And I'll be the first to say, even though it goes without saying, so many players on every single team across Major League Baseball will do things to get an advantage, whether it's recovery later in age, whether it's for better performance, what have you. Every team is trying to cheat to a degree, because as the old saying goes, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. And that certainly holds true for a lot of guys, especially Profar, who was coming off of a season where if he didn't perform with the Padres, he would more than likely be an Eddie Rosario type player right now as a mainstay in AAA for the most part, in his early 30s as a corner outfield bat. That isn't the case now with Jurickson, and it has in large part to do with not just blossoming with the San Diego Padres, but clearly has to do with what he had in his system. The great question is how long was he doing this behind either the Padres back as well as now the Atlanta Braves for Alex Anthopoulos, who's a fantastic GM, usually one who doesn't get tricked with something like this, to be completely blindsided by this suspension happening after the ink is sealed. It's sealed, covered, done. It's all dried up, and he's going to be locked in for $40+ million over the next couple years unless they dump him somewhere. Knowing that he's getting that kind of guaranteed money for what was an anomaly of a season, and knowing that Profar may very well never put up those numbers again, not to say that he can't be a good player, but seriously, when you have career highs in slugging, RBI, average on-base percentage, and runs scored, and when your OPS plus is a career high by 27 points, there's clearly something going wrong here. So, yes, Jurickson Profar, without question, the current biggest fraud across Major League Baseball. And now let's see how this continues when he gets back from his suspension and how he performs for the Atlanta Braves in the second half of this season. Folks, let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. How do you feel about everything that went on with Jurickson Profar? I feel for Braves fans. I know that may seem crazy for me to say as a Mets fan, but I do, because you never want to sign someone and then be absolutely swindled the way that you were. Completely believed to be that you're getting this thing when it was a false reality, a false promise. What you were getting was an 80-game suspension and a guy that can't even be eligible if, say, Atlanta goes on an amazing run this year and it makes it all the way to the postseason play. So I would love to hear your thoughts down below. Who do you think are some of the biggest frauds across Major League Baseball currently outside of Jurickson Profar for a future segment on the platform? But that'll do it for our latest video here at WardyMLB, presented by Stark Raven Sports Guys. Thank you so much again for watching. Be on the lookout, as we're going to be having more MLB-wide topics dropping in the coming days here on the platform for each and every one of you. See you on the next one. Peace out.